What if you wake up, let's say tomorrow, and your fitness app, your wellness app suggests that you should go on a run because it will, help you meet your calorie goals. Well, that's great. But what if you don't feel like going for a run? And what if your body hurts? And what if you, are sore from the 2 days before when you blasted yourself, for 45 minutes each day with really rigorous work? I mean, those nuances and those feedback loops have to be accounted for. And we have to have adaptive technology that accounts for that, which is why it requires a team. So any company endeavoring to kind of go down this journey is really going to think about leveraging the full stack of talent, right? From data scientists to machine learning engineers, to data engineers, to software developers, right? To really create these experiences that include the personalization, right? The personalization is as an exercise is great, but if it's not wrapped into a larger experience, then I think it's kind of missing the mark. So there are a lot of components that go into it.
Hi, welcome to the Tech Show. I'm Aziza with Focus GTS. Focus GTS is a niche technology staffing and recruiting firm focusing on data science and analytics, digital marketing technology, cloud technology, and business intelligence and analytics. Today, we are here with Jerrold Jackson. He is a vice president and a head of machine learning and data at Exos. And today we want to talk about how to use data and technology to amplify human performance. So welcome, Jerrold, and thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Jerrold is currently working as vice president and head of machine learning and data over at Exos, correct?
That's correct.
That's awesome. So can you, tell us a little bit about what you do at Exos and just the company in general and a little bit about your role there?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And thank you again for having me. So you're correct. I am the vice president and head of machine learning and data at Exos. We are a human performance company. And so just to give you a bit of background, our founder, Mark Verstegen, is a pioneer in this industry of human performance. He spent the last 20 plus years really just working on upgrading people's lives. And what we mean by that is, the bedrock of this company is really in elite athletes and elite military training. So being kind of the go-to, the de facto company in programming and in methodology. We've since evolved to also working with corporations. So we work with 25% of the Fortune 100. And so that's the history, kind of the first, so two plus decades of Exos. Moving into this next decade, Sarah Rob O'Hagan, who's our current CEO and an industry veteran, has been brought on board along with a few other executive level leaders to bring the company kind of into the evolving consumer landscape. So 4 basic pillars of methodology that Exos really sort of prescribes to. It's mindset, nutrition, movement, and recovery. We can now bring this expertise of coaching and methodology to the consumer space. And so that's a big part of what my role has been designed to do, which is to think about how do we personalize that entire experience, right? Now that we're in this world where everything is digital, the idea is that we can have tech-enabled personalization. And so a big part of what I'm doing is bringing machine learning and other techniques to help do that.
That's interesting. So I'm passionate about health and wellness and all that space as well. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you and learn a little bit more on everything you're doing over at Exos right now. So today I want to talk about how do you use data and technology to amplify human performance? Nowadays we have a lot of technology track our performance. We have Apple Watches, we have Fitbits, and then we have equipment in the gyms, right? We also have equipment at home now with Peloton and Mirror. We have all kinds of different data points being collected at all times. But how can you tell, the story, and how do you personalize that data on? Because everyone's different, right? I can go and have a workout and have a certain heart rate, but I don't know how is this data really helping me, right? So can you, elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, no, of course. So data's been used this entire time. The goal here really is to think about a couple of things. One is, how do we even get better at using data, right? We know that averages don't really serve you as an individual. So you are an individual with your own individual, let's say, goals, whether they're athletic or not athletic. And so how do we use data to not only understand who you are, what you need, but also how to get you there? And so, in broad brush strokes, and we can get a little bit more specific as we move along here, the promise of approaches like machine learning and really technology in general is that we can process through a whole bunch of your data and a whole bunch of data of folks just like you to serve up some of the best once again, personalized either recommendations or sort of methodological approaches that we have a notion will work for you, right? And it kind of starts with, of course, we can get into not too specific. We get into sort of models and how those work and the need for data to feed those models. That's effectively what it is, right? You can build process that's tech enabled that really kind of takes what's been data driven for Exos and really the entire industry for a while, and you can scale it in many ways to even supplement the in-person experience.
So what you're saying is there's enough data out there to personalize everything that we do in the fitness world.
Yeah. So and some of it's conceptual. I will say I think that the industry in general has a lot of aspirations, and then there are a lot of folks, Exos included, who are beginning to chip away at what the possibilities are. You mentioned a few of the very common and popular connected devices out there, which certainly can help, right? So how, as an industry, right, how do we take data that we know is dynamic and fast moving and integrate that into tech-enabled process to then serve up, as you said, all sorts of personalized environments for people to thrive in, right? So a big part of what we're focused on here at Exos is creating those digital experiences and digital solutions, once again, from the elite athlete all the way down, because we do believe that, that there's a performer in all of us, right? All of us have some goal of some sort. To your point, if we can harness data in process enough, that's, I think, the promise of this field of human performance, and I think the use of technology and machine learning specifically.
Yeah. So you mentioned that your focus is perhaps on personalization. Yes, what is and that's a complex model to build. And what is the main challenge when it comes to building this type of model?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts here. One is I would think about this maybe as not just a single model, but almost sort of a group or perhaps even an ensemble of models, right? So I think it wouldn't be correct and probably just a little bit naive to think that there's one model that serves every use case here. There's certainly going to be a number of sort of models or processes, methodologies working in tandem to not only process your data, but to process, kind of the larger universe of data to inform your experience specifically, right? And there are a couple of different levers that can be optimized and can be sort of impacted, because there's both the consumer, there's the person who's doing the exercise or doing the mindfulness or taking part of recovery activities. There's also this concept of a coach, right? And so there are multiple points kind of throughout the value chain where a model or models can be implemented. At the end of the day, any of these approaches are extremely data hungry. And what I mean by that is you do need vast amounts of data to do this in ways that are most optimal. There are approaches that you can take that certainly aren't a substitute for having either large amounts of data on an individual or people like an individual, right? So segments of people, or having just long history, right, on an individual person or a group of folks, or both. So there's different methodological approaches that you can take kind of in the absence of one versus the other. Also, what will be sort of vital to this field as it develops is not just data science and sort of thinking conceptually and academically about building models and algorithms, but it's also a heavy engineering task as well, right? So any company kind of endeavoring to take on to kind of go down this journey is really going to think about leveraging and really levering the full stack of sort of talent, right? From data scientists to machine learning engineers, to data engineers, to software developers, right? To really create these experiences that include the personalization, right? The personalization is as an exercise is great, but if it's not wrapped into a larger experience, then I think it's kind of missing the mark. So there are a lot of components that go into it.
So from what you're saying, I understand is that it's a lot of data, right? And it's a lot of data points and the challenge comes in when you have to actually put it all together and personalize the experience of the particular person or people that are similar to that person, right? Yeah, so that's definitely, I think that these type of models are pretty sophisticated and they require sophisticated techniques to build it, right? So there's also dynamic data that goes into it. Can it be trained to include other data, such as like the way a person's body evolves as they continue their fitness journey or mind journey or recovery journey? Is that something that's in the model?
Oh, it has to be. Absolutely. It's a non-negotiable from where I stand. I mean, what's exciting to me in this field is that humans are incredibly complex, right? And kind of, the point I made earlier about sort of averages versus more individualized data points. We need all of those dynamic changes to truly and accurately serve up a product or a solution, a digital project or a digital solution that meets the demands of the human, right? So whereas, kind of when you go from, let's say, basic linear regression to some more sophisticated machine learning techniques, you go from basically, just to give an example, linear relationships between data points to nonlinear relationships between data points, right? So, it's really important to kind of think beyond just basic associations and to have enough data to capture all of the nuances of the human experience, right? What if you wake up, let's say tomorrow, and your fitness app, your wellness app suggests that you should go on a run because it will, help you meet your calorie goals. Well, that's great. But what if you don't feel like going for a run? And what if your body hurts? And what if you, are sore from the 2 days before when you blasted yourself, for 45 minutes each day with really rigorous work? I mean, those nuances and those feedback loops have to be accounted for. And we have to have adaptive technology that accounts for that, which is why it requires a team.
So from my understanding, you guys are just going to start building this model out. So it's in the progress, right? Or are you already working on it?
Yeah, no, so we already got some things underway. I certainly would be remiss to sort of, I can't dive into all the details at this point. But what I will say is for Exos specifically, I mentioned Mark and Sarah earlier on, our founder and CEO. They've been focused for a number of years on really sort of honing in on what the model is, right? What's the best way to enhance human performance, right? Regardless, once again, what your goal is. And it's those same exact techniques that I simply am going to work to sort of leverage in a digital sort of space with technology. And I say that very easily. It's easy to say. It's a very difficult thing, of course, to continue to sort of build upon. But I'm joining a team of folks who are super passionate about doing that and who have been working at these things for quite some time.
Going back to data points, right?
Sure.
As you were speaking about some of the dynamic data, and I guess
Yeah.
the question is, when you have certain data points, for example, like heart rate, right? It varies. So as you do cardio exercise, you have a certain heart rate and you burn a certain amount of calories. But when you go and do, for example, a squats or some kind of weight lifting exercise, that also gives you a heart rate. Does that model take all that data into consideration?
Totally. No. So you raise a great point. Any adaptive technology in this space has to account for a variety of things, right? Not only so nothing is univariate, right? The world is not just an individual data point. We've got to not only know that your heart rate is fluctuating, going up and down. We've got to also know what exercise that you're doing in that moment. We also need to ideally be accounting for, as we're driving a personalized experience for you, what exercises you did historically and what your heart rate was throughout those as well, right? Just to toss out an example, that should inform whether or not we encourage you to go really hard, let's say, for a certain amount of time or not, with a certain exercise, with a certain frequency over a certain period of time, right? I mean, all of those factors are critical here. And I'll say this as well, not every data point is the same, right? So, there will be data integrity issues. There will be lots of noise in the data. A big part of what is inherently difficult about this space is accurately measuring these things. We'll take a really simple example. Let's say you've got a connected scale at home, right? And you weigh yourself on whatever frequency that you do. That scale may or may not be accurate, but hopefully it's at least consistent. And what I mean by that is it may or may not be your actual weight, right, as defined in science, but hopefully it's at least consistent because you step on the same exact weight each time. So should we personalize to that specific number on the scale, or should we personalize to your overall goals of losing a certain percentage of weight? It's a question that I think the industry has to grapple with in general, and it gets to some of the nuances and trade-offs that ultimately, as a technologist, we have to think about, right? Do we want to optimize being accurate or being consistent or being both?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point you bring up, because based on someone's goals, it might be you might want to lose weight, but you might need to gain muscle. So if you say I want to lose 5 pounds, maybe you need to gain 3 pounds of muscle and that's how you can lose 5 pounds of fat, or vice versa. So I was also like educating the consumer on what is the goal and how to get there and what's going to be required.
Yep.
The way they want to look or feel, right? So sometimes you might lose 5 pounds and you still don't look the way you thought you would. So I think that's when it gets really complex. And that brings me to my next question, which is how much data points do you actually need to build all this out, right? There's so much information out there. And I know you probably can't list it all out, but maybe you can give me like a good overview.
Yeah, no, I think so. I can list a couple of ideas just to keep it, broad strokes, but I think the high level answer is you need enough data to, once again, capture the nuances of the human experience. Specifically for the example that you were giving around body composition, it's a fairly complex thing to measure. If you go to a high-end proper fitness facility like Exos, there are over 400 globally, right, across 6 different continents, or to a nice gym of another brand, or even just a doctor's office, they presumably have tools that can accurately measure things like body composition. If you are at home on one of any number of connected devices, that you got online somewhere, or who knows what condition it's in, how accurate it is, it becomes a challenge to kind of to build technology that accounts for the fact that there are even a variety of different types of signals in terms of the accuracy of them, let alone the signal itself. So of course, we want things like heart rate. Of course, we want different biometrics. There are different kinetic or movement-based metrics that we also, the industry has also begun to collect. I'm not going to name a bunch of brands, but they exist. So connected devices in general, really all of them should be used and should be inputs into any model or set of models that attempt to personalize an experience for you. And once again, at Exos, our particular challenge, but also opportunity, is that we've got 20 plus years of chipping away at those 4 pillars: mindset, nutrition, movement, and recovery. Across all 4 of those, there are ways to measure and capture that data. We've been doing it for quite some time. And once again, the real opportunity here is enabling it with technology in a digital world that we live in.
How do you, I guess, deal with data quality issues when it comes down to that? Because there's all kinds of data. And from what I heard from data scientists, that, if you don't have good data, you can't build a good model. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I would almost argue that you should plan to not have good data. It's very rare. I don't know any phenomenon in the world, whether you're a pilot flying a plane, or whether you're a data scientist or a data engineer building personalization. You're never going to have 100% visibility into what you're aiming to accomplish, what you're flying towards. And so you have to kind of do what you make do with what you have. The advantage of having more data points than not, right? So having an excess of data is that kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. There are more likely more needles in the haystack the bigger your haystack is, to use that metaphor. So it goes back to the point I made earlier about the models that you have to use in these environments being data hungry, right? Erring on the side of more data points is certainly better than not. And the data quality issues really never go away, but you can make better estimations, right? You can build models that make better estimations that have higher levels of certainty the more data points that you have. And so it does make it tricky when you don't, there's a phenomenon called the cold start problem within machine learning. And the general idea is that it's difficult to build something when you don't have anything, right, to start with. And so I won't go into all the methodological sort of implications here, but there are methods and approaches that you can use to still make informed recommendations, for example, in a personalized tech-enabled environment when you don't even completely know who this person is, what their background is. It's a common problem to solve for.
Thank you so much for coming.
Of course, great meeting you. Take care.
You too. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.